let's make the best English muffins you'll ever have. These ones are extra soft and plump with the delicious golden griddled crust and those iconic nooks and crannies. They're so easy to make, you don't need an oven. Once you've tried these, you might never go back to store-bought English muffins. The store-bought suddenly look sad, pale, and gray by comparison. Don't get me wrong, I would never turn down any English muffins, but homemade English muffins just hit differently. They're delicious. Make a big batch, store these in the freezer. They make the best breakfast sandwiches. This recipe comes from my cookbook, Simple Pleasures, which you can pre-order today to reserve your copy of the cookbook. There's many other great bread recipes in there and lots of great breakfast ideas too. I'm going to show you 2 ways to make English muffins. The first method is straightforward. Your mixer is essentially kneading the dough for you. And the second is a no-knead method for anyone who doesn't have a stand mixer. Both will give you exactly the same end result. The first step for both methods is to mix the milk and water and warm it up in the microwave. About 30 seconds is fine. We just want it lukewarm to help get the yeast going. Give it a stir and let it sit for 5 minutes. Into the bowl of a stand mixer, add the flour, the salt, and the liquids. And you want to mix the ingredients on medium speed until the dough comes together. Then increase the speed to high and knead for another 3 minutes. The dough should pull away from the sides of the bowl and feel tacky. You want to grease your bowl, grease your hands, ball up the dough. This needs to rise for about 2 hours. So cover the dough well and set aside to rise for about 2 hours. Now let's make the no-knead version. Perfect for anyone who doesn't have a stand mixer or likes to make dough by hand without the fuss of kneading dough. In a bowl, combine water, milk, salt, and yeast. For this method, we want to add the salt directly into the wet ingredients as it has a chance to dissolve. Give everything a quick mix and add the flour. Mix everything together with a fork until it forms a rough, shaggy dough. Now this dough is a low hydration dough. It's not going to be as wet as the other no-knead doughs we've made before, and it's meant to be that way. Lots of recipes will tell you that English muffins should be made with a super wet, high hydration dough, and I'm not sure why people think that, but I think it's because many people confuse English muffins with English crumpets. Now, if you've watched my big bubble focaccia or my Italian bread video, you would know that high hydration dough yields air bubbles. We want the exact opposite here. Having a low hydration dough is key to getting a tight and fluffy crumb, which is so characteristic of well-made English muffins. Because this is a low hydration dough, eventually you will have to switch to using your hand unless you want to bend your fork. You want to wet your hand with water and continue mixing, making sure there's no dry patches of flour and dough. Using a wet hand really allows you to hydrate any dry patches of dough. The dough should feel tacky but not wet. Cover the dough and let it rest for 30 minutes to allow the flour to properly hydrate. After 30 minutes, we're going to do what we often do with no-knead bread making, a round of stretch and folds. You mostly see this for high hydration doughs, but we can also use this method for lower hydration doughs like this one. We just do it a little bit differently. Wet your hand and perform your first series of stretch and folds, turning the bowl a small amount as we go. Take one side of the dough, stretch and fold the dough onto the opposite side of the bowl. Do about 4 to 5 folds. Then take your wet hand and push the dough under itself, creating a rounded ball. This method, along with the stretch and folds, allows you to start to develop the gluten network. As you can see, we went from a shaggy dough to a nice plump dough ball, just like the dough we made using a mixer. Cover the no-knead dough and set aside for 20 minutes to allow the developing gluten network to relax. Then come back and do a second series of stretch and folds. You want to do about 4 to 5 folds per session. You'll know when to stop because the dough won't be elastic anymore. You'll try to stretch it and it will feel tense. At that point, using a wet hand, you're going to ball up the dough as we did before and come back in 30 minutes and perform your third series of stretch and folds. You want to repeat this process another 2 times, so you've done 4 rounds of stretch and folds in total. After every series, you do want to ball up the dough, pushing the dough under itself and creating a smooth, plump dough. After the last series of stretch and folds, Cover the dough and allow to rise for about 1 to 2 hours. 2 hours later, we're ready to make English muffins. As you can see, both doughs look identical. You're going to prepare a couple of baking sheets by dusting them with either fine cornmeal or semolina. I personally like to use semolina. Both work exactly the same way and will help give the muffins their signature outside texture. Transfer your dough onto your clean work surface and we're going to make English muffins. With this recipe, you should be able to get about 6 English muffins, or in my case, 12 English muffins, as I made 2 versions of this dough. The dough should feel tacky and you should be able to easily roll each muffin into a ball. However, if the dough does start to stick to your hands, I just like to lightly grease my hand. Whatever works for you. Now we're not making dinner rolls, so we are going to flan these so they're about 3 to 3.5 inches across and about 1 1/4 inches thick. Place the shaved English muffins on the baking trays, add more semolina on top, and if necessary, flan these out again. Cover them and let them rise one last time, about 15 to 20 minutes, no longer than that. This is what they should look like when they're ready, nice and plump. Preheat a large skillet with a tablespoon of butter over low heat for a few minutes. You don't want the pan to be super hot, but the butter should slightly sizzle. That's your sign to add the English muffins. Then cook the English muffins in batches. I cook about 3 at a time. You don't want to overcrowd your pan or they will not cook evenly. Once you flip them, gently press them down. Both the tops and the bottoms of the English muffins should be golden. They'll take about 5 minutes on each side. Once they're cooked, place these on a wire rack and allow these to cool for at least 10 minutes. If you're going to freeze them, they will have to cool completely before you freeze them. Now let me show you how to open these up. There is a way, and that's using a fork. Using a fork allows you to fluff up the inside and get that iconic fluffy English muffin crumb and texture. These are the fluffiest, softest English muffins you will ever have. These are delicious plain with a little bit of butter, maybe some jam, and they make the best breakfast sandwiches. I do have make ahead and freeze sausage egg McMuffins in my cookbook for busy mornings. The book is available worldwide. You can pre-order the book at the link below to reserve your copy of the cookbook.